Going to add the animations, the bank left and the bank right, to the player movement now. What I need to do is add a new object, and we need the keyboard input so we can code with that. Because what I'm going to do is set it up so when we press the key it triggers the animation state. So now when we go into the event sheet, we can add an event which is the keyboard input event, and what we want it to do is when the key is down, in this case click on there and select the right arrow key, then on the player we need to set the animation to play bank right animation that we set up earlier. Now if we leave it like that, as soon as we let go of the right arrow key, it'll just keep banking right, or the image of banking right. So what we need to add is another keyboard command when the key is released, same key, right arrow, done, set the player animation to our default. Done. So pushing right and it plays the animation. So all we need to do is set that up for the other direction. So I've just set up that in the exact same way. So created a keyboard input event, left arrow down, set animation bank left, then when the keyboard left arrow key is released, set animation default. And so now we've got our animations left and right. I want to add some more features to the movement of the player character, and I'm going to create a particle effect. So when it pushes forwards, there's a kind of like a jet flare that comes out from these kind of exhaust cylinders out the back of the sprite here. So I'm going to right click on here, insert a new object, and I'm going to insert a particle effect. So this is just a special effect that creates sort of little dots essentially, and kind of, you can think of it like a kind of a cannon that shoots out, or like a hose that fires out these little images. So I'm going to create it outside the layout. Construct 2 has this kind of peculiarity that even though you're going to create the objects with some event sheet coding, there has to be a version of this object that exists when the layout loads. So it'll be placed to the side so you won't actually see it, and then we'll tell it to destroy itself if it's outside the layout to save on memory, but it has it in the layout. It will make sense as we kind of go along with this. So I've made like a kind of fire sort of sprite, quite small. I'm just going to zoom in there and reposition it a bit because I want it. Oops, that's not right. Where's the marquee tool? There we go. Just want to move it more central. That's better. So this is my particle system. I want it, so imagine if this is the hose or the tap, then I want to change the angle of it, so let's rotate it down because I want it to kind of basically kind of fire out from the kind of exhaust pipes on the back of the sprite there. And the way I'm going to do it is using the key press down command to generate a one-shot particle system. So if I'm going to rename that, I'm going to call it engine part, and here I've got the properties for it. So the rate is like how many of the particles it ejects. I think it's per second, so I'm going to set that to 2 because it's going to be not going to be a continuous spray, it's going to be a one shot. So as I'm moving forwards, it's shooting out 2 particles every frame basically, because it'll pick it up as I'm pressing that key. The spray cone is the width of which these particles can be ejected from. I want that just set to 1, so it's very thin. They come out in like a straight line. Here there's the speed, the initial size, and the opacity. So I'm going to set the size, I'm going to keep that at 32. There's a lot of kind of parameters to this that you can play around with in your own game. I'm just going to choose the ones that I'm going to work with. This is important here, particle lifetime properties, destroy mode, fade to invisible. So gradually, as the particle is ejected, it will fade out. Once it reaches 0 and is completely transparent or invisible, then it destroys that image, which is important in terms of memory. And the timeout is how long the particle exists for. And you've got other things like gravity and randomization of angle. We're going to use this later on to do the explosion effects. What I'm interested in here is the grow rate. I'm going to set that to a negative value, so it decreases in size as it is being ejected out. So I'm going to set that to -64. And also I'm going to get the size randomizer. I'm going to set that to 50. Okay, to create something a bit more random. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to place this in the layout so you can sort of see what it does. So we should see sort of like a little, you can just see that there, kind of jettisoning out this sort of flame. To make it look more flame-like, I'm going to go to the behaviors and just underneath behaviors is the effects, and this is the blend mode. I'm going to change that to additive. And if I just drag that here, you can see it's become sort of semi-transparent, but it's kind of like it's almost like a lighting effect. So this will give it a more kind of flame-like appearance. Before I work on the event sheet to program this, I just need to make some adjustments to the player sprite. I'm going to insert some image points. If I click on this, it sets set origin and image points. Let's zoom in a bit. So that point there is the origin, but you can also set image points. And what these are kind of like, if you imagine sort of pins on the sprite for which you can reference when you want to create something. So I'm going to put a little point on there and another little point on here. So image point 1 and image point 2 refer to these specific points on the sprite. And what I need to do, so they're the same for each animation frame, is right click on the image point and then apply to the whole animation, because you can have different image points on different frames. So if I click on the other frame there, it's all in the same place. Because basically what I want to do is when I press the up key, I want Construct to create this particle system from that image point. So that's going to be where my kind of tap or hose is going to be. So close that down. Then we go to the event sheet, add another keyboard event on key is down, and choose the key. So it's going to be forward, so the up arrow. Done. And then I want to add a system event, and in the system actions you can create an object, and the object I wish to create is the engine particle. Where I want to create it is on layer 3, which is my game layer, and the coordinates for that is going to use this image point. So it's the player sprite image point X, and in brackets which image point. So image point 1, let's copy and paste that and just change the X to a Y. Done. And I'm going to create another object with the same event. I'm going to choose the player again, layer 3, Control V, but this time it's going to be image point 2. Done. So as long as the forward key, the up key, is being pressed, it will create, oops, I've just made a mistake there, create object player. I want to create the object engine particle, sorry, at these two image points. So I'm going to run this and test it out. So when I push forwards now, you can see this kind of fiery jet trail, and this will be combined with sound later on. So now I've got, you know, left and right movement and forward movement.